Every morning, millions of people reach for their favorite cup of coffee to kickstart their day with a necessary energy boost. But for many, that morning ritual is quickly followed by a sudden, uncomfortable turn in their gut that ruins the experience. Bloating, cramping, and that frantic white-knuckle sprint to the bathroom are common complaints that plague coffee drinkers across the globe daily. Almost everyone instinctively points the finger at the same suspect: caffeine, the very stimulant they are drinking the coffee for. It feels like a logical conclusion, given that caffeine is a potent chemical known to interact with our nervous system. However, the truth is far more surprising, as caffeine is actually innocent of the specific digestive distress causing these daily problems. The real culprit has been hiding in plain sight, sitting right there in your cup, waiting to be identified by science. Once you understand what is truly happening, you will never look at your morning latte or cappuccino the same way again. Even more fascinating is that this reaction is not a malfunction or a disorder, but a perfectly normal biological process. If you have ever cut back on coffee because your stomach could not handle it, you are certainly not alone today. But by blaming the coffee, you are missing the actual problem, leading to a cycle of unnecessary dietary restrictions and frustration. A massive industry has emerged to cater to this fear, offering decaf blends, low-acid roasts, and various gut-friendly coffee alternatives. Yet, these expensive products rarely address the root cause because they focus on the bean rather than what we add. Caffeine is simply an easy target because it is a stimulant that many people already view with a degree of suspicion. Because caffeine does have minor effects on the gut, it feels like the obvious culprit for any digestive discomfort experienced. However, if caffeine were the true cause, then plain black coffee should hit the digestive system just as hard as lattes. For the vast majority of people, black coffee does not cause the same level of severe distress as dairy-laden coffee drinks. So, if the caffeine is not the primary offender, what is actually causing this recurring and painful digestive reaction? The answer lies in a single, specific enzyme, and whether your body has decided it no longer needs to produce it. To be fair, caffeine does have some influence on the gut, as it nudges the stomach to produce more acid. It also speeds up the transit time of food through your intestines, which can be noticeable for some sensitive individuals. In certain people, caffeine may even relax the valve that keeps stomach acid exactly where it belongs, causing mild heartburn. But none of these effects explain the intense wave of bloating and cramping that arrives 30 to 60 minutes later. That specific timing and pattern of symptoms is not a caffeine signature. It belongs to something entirely different and external. It is something your coffee did not come with, but something you added to your mug yourself to improve the flavor. That ingredient is milk, heavy cream, or perhaps that flavored creamer that has been sitting in your fridge for weeks. Black coffee, in its purest form, contains absolutely zero lactose, making it an unlikely source of this specific digestive trouble. However, most popular coffee orders like lattes, cappuccinos, or even a splash of cream are packed with dairy-based lactose sugar. For a huge portion of the adult population, that small amount of dairy is enough to trigger a significant chain reaction. This reaction has nothing to do with the coffee bean and everything to do with the sugar known as lactose. The so-called coffee stomach that people complain about is actually a dairy problem wearing a clever coffee costume. To understand the process, we must look at what happens inside your small intestine after you consume dairy products. Your body relies on a specific enzyme called lactase, whose primary job is to break down lactose into simpler sugars. These simpler sugars are then easily absorbed into your bloodstream to provide the energy your body needs to function well. If you do not produce enough lactase, the lactose remains intact as it travels further down into your digestive tract. It does not simply vanish. Instead, it continues its journey, completely undigested, toward your large intestine, causing potential issues. The large intestine is not an empty tube. It is a bustling ecosystem packed with trillions of helpful, hungry bacteria. These bacteria encounter the undigested lactose and immediately begin to consume it, which is exactly what they are designed for. This process, known as fermentation, produces various gases, including hydrogen, carbon dioxide, and sometimes even methane, as byproducts. The buildup of these gases is the direct cause of the bloating and cramping you feel after your morning coffee. Furthermore, this fermentation process draws extra water into the colon, which often leads to a sudden, urgent trip to the bathroom. All of that discomfort happens in under an hour, stemming from one cup of coffee mixed with a little dairy. It is not the caffeine's fault. It is simply an enzyme that your body may have stopped producing after childhood. You might wonder why a human body would stop making an enzyme it clearly needs, as it seems like a flaw. But this is not an accident. For almost every mammal on Earth, the shutoff of lactase production is the default setting. Nature assumes that once you are weaned, you no longer require the ability to digest the lactose found in milk. However, about 7 to 10,000 years ago, this biological norm changed for certain human populations around the world. As humans began herding animals, a genetic mutation appeared that kept the lactase switch in the on position for life. The wild part is that this did not happen just once. It occurred independently at least 5 separate times globally. Different populations on different continents stumbled upon this same evolutionary fix to ensure they could survive on dairy products. Researchers found that ancient people were using dairy for thousands of years before this mutation became common in the population. They were not drinking milk directly. They were fermenting it into cheese and yogurt, which removes most of the lactose. This suggests that milk itself did not cause the genetic shift, but rather a more brutal environmental pressure did. The leading theory points to famine, where recurring crop failures made milk one of the few available calorie sources. In those desperate times, being able to drink milk straight was not a lifestyle choice. It was a matter of survival. This means the real number to consider is not how many people are intolerant, but how many can actually drink milk. Only about 1/3 of adults on this planet can drink milk without any issues, while the majority cannot. We have spent decades treating lactose intolerance like a disorder, but it is actually the ancestral setting for our species. The people who can drink a glass of milk at 40 are not the normal ones. They are the genetic mutants. So, next time your stomach turns after a latte, remember, it is just your biology, not a mystery of coffee. So why would a human body stop making an enzyme it clearly still needs? It seems like a design flaw, doesn't it? But the truth is, this isn't an accident or a glitch. For basically every mammal on Earth, that shutoff is the default. Nature assumes that once you are weaned, you are done needing that specific enzyme. It is a programmed biological fade-out. However, somewhere in the last 7 to 10,000 years, that ancient biological script began to change for some of us. As human populations started herding animals and relying on milk, a rare genetic mutation appeared in our ancestors' DNA. This mutation kept the lactase production switch stuck in the on position, allowing adults to process dairy for their entire lives. What is truly wild is that this didn't happen just once. It happened independently, in completely unrelated populations across different continents. Evolution essentially solved the exact same puzzle 5 separate times, as different groups stumbled onto the same survival fix. Researchers digging into this history found something surprising in ancient teeth and pottery residue from thousands of years ago. It turns out people were already consuming dairy long before this mutation became common, but they were not drinking it raw. They were fermenting their milk into cheese and yogurt, a process that naturally strips out the lactose before it hits the gut. So, milk itself was not the primary driver of this genetic shift. Something much more intense and brutal was at play. The leading theory among scientists is famine-recurring periods where crops failed and milk became the only calorie source left. In those desperate moments, being able to drink milk straight, lactose and all, was not a lifestyle choice or a preference. It was a matter of survival, a biological edge that allowed those with the mutation to outlive those without it. This brings us to a number that is worth sitting with. Just over 1/3 of adults on this planet can drink milk. That is it, 1 in 3. Everyone else, the actual majority of adults alive right now, is doing exactly what they were designed to do. We have spent decades treating lactose intolerance like it is a broken system, a disorder to be managed or apologized for. But it is not the exception. It is the ancestral setting, the default mode for our entire species throughout human history. So, the people who can still drink a glass of milk at 40 are not the normal ones, they are the mutants. Next time your stomach turns on you after a latte, but stays calm after black coffee, remember, it is not a coincidence. That is your body telling you exactly what is happening, and it is a signal you can easily learn to manage. A simple lactase supplement before your dairy, or a swap to oat or almond creamer, can fix the issue immediately. Even switching to an aged cheese instead of a splash of cream can bypass the problem entirely without sacrificing your ritual. But honestly, the bigger takeaway here is not really about coffee at all, or even about the milk in your mug. If one simple sugar can flip everything you thought you understood about your own digestion, it changes your perspective. It forces us to ask what else we have been blaming for the wrong reasons, simply because we misunderstood our biology. We often look for complex explanations for our discomfort when the answer is buried in our evolutionary past. Your body is not failing you when it reacts to lactose. It is following a blueprint written thousands of years ago. By understanding this, you stop fighting your own biology and start working with the way your system actually functions. It is a reminder that our bodies are not machines that should always work perfectly, but living products of history. The next time you reach for that creamer, you will know exactly what is happening inside your small intestine. you will understand the role of the lactase enzyme and why its absence is a perfectly normal human trait. This knowledge empowers you to make choices that keep you comfortable without the need for unnecessary medical worry. Science has a way of turning our daily frustrations into fascinating stories about where we came from as a species. So, enjoy that coffee, but keep in mind the hidden chemistry that dictates how your body processes every single sip. It is a small detail with a massive impact on your morning, proving that biology is always lurking in the background. We are all walking museums of our ancestors' survival strategies, carrying their adaptations in our very own DNA. Whether you are one of the mutants or part of the majority, your body is doing exactly what it evolved to do. And that in itself is a pretty remarkable thing to consider while you are just trying to wake up. The mystery of the coffee stomach is solved, and it turns out the culprit was never the bean at all. It was the dairy, the sugar, and the ancient history of human survival hiding in plain sight in your cup. So, go ahead and adjust your routine, knowing that you have finally decoded the secret of your morning brew. It is a simple shift in perspective, but it changes your relationship with your food and your own body. Keep exploring these hidden connections, because there is always more to the story than what we see on the surface. Your health is a journey of understanding, and now you have one more piece of the puzzle in your hands. Stay curious, keep questioning the obvious, and remember that sometimes the most normal things are the most interesting. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the science of your morning cup. Until next time, keep brewing.